fine. All right, so this is Joie Blaney, one of my favorite musicians on the planet, possibly my favorite. We met at Cantor's Deli, a legendary LA restaurant that has a place called the Kibitz Room next to it. And in this Kibitz Room, they have music 365 days a year. And Joey was playing one night when I was there eating at the restaurant, and I just heard this amazing voice. And for some reason, I don't know if this is really an accurate assessment, but whatever song he was singing that night that caught my ear, it sounded like Billy Corgan in a way. And like, I think it sounded like Tonight, Tonight, like that kind of long, dramatic vocal. And so I ran into the bar just in case, because I'd run into Billy Corgan over the years a couple times in Chicago, and he's not above doing dive bars. And so I thought, oh my God, maybe it's Billy Corgan. And I run in, and instead I see Joey, who is playing to like 4 people, not his fault, just the way the room is sometimes. And you were just totally leaning in on the edge of the stage as if you're Bono in front of the Rose Bowl or something, going all out for 4 people. And I just sat down. I couldn't move for an hour, and I watched everything. I bought every CD you had. I bought the copies for my brother, and anyways, and we became friends ever since. And in 2012, when we started Radio Titans in Hollywood, we offered you, or maybe you asked to have a show. I can't remember which. We'll get to that.
You offered me and I always I showed up for everything that you wanted me to do, because like you were like one of my first, like I was only in town, I think I moved from New York, and that was like I got the residency there, and that was like the first night of the residency, and I didn't know anybody, I didn't have a car, and I would just go up and do what I do, which is just play music. And then we became friends, and then we pretty much just like you would do these variety shows, and anything, you involved me in everything. There was like that stage reading of your movie and I would just show up, because I didn't know, I didn't have any friends or any kind of like outlet to do anything. So when I found someone that was like as cool as you, and you were interested in doing stuff with me, I was like, yeah, sure, I did it. And then one day you called me and was like, hey, I'm going to do this interview thing, do you want to do it? I was like, oh sure, love to do it. Man, it was like, for me, I did it like 6 months, and what we know now, if we knew back then.
Yeah.
No, really, it's God, it was so much fun, because I like to find out about people. And by then I was in town, 5 years, and I started to know a lot more people. And these people that I knew were like either friends, or like Kim Fowley, was pursuing, he wanted to manage me. And I really liked Kim, because he's like this unsung, I wouldn't say hero. I would say like this entity, that would just like, if you really know that you're making headways in Hollywood, if you have a Kim Fowley story.
Huh.
So as I had a lot of stories with Kim, he wanted to manage me, change my name, and
Kim Fowley, just so people know, he's a legendary rock and roll manager who discovered the Runaways, I believe, or put them together. Yeah. Joan Jett, Lita Ford, very groundbreaking women's punk group in the 70s, and did a lot of other acts.
Yeah, he wrote songs, I think, like for Kiss. He had a song called Alley Oop. These little niche kitschy little songs, but he had this very like he was tall, and he was like he if the devil was personified, I would think that what the devil would look like. He was dressed to the nines, and would just say, and interviewing him, we filmed it, and I've seen the footage of it. And it's really like, people come up to me and they go, oh, I saw your footage of Kim Fowley. And I'm like, oh yeah. It's like, man, that was some great stuff. Cause like it's weird now to look back at like what I was doing, because I'm not a comedian. I'm just a curious person. I wanted to ask questions that no one asked, about like, I said, Kim, you've done so much. What is the one thing you want to do that you haven't done yet? And he's like, I want to find love. And here
Huh.
was the guy, because it was like he had this really tough exterior where you had to wear him down to get to like the real, because he would just like throw all these non sequiturs into the conversation, the distraction and be larger than life. But I saw like the human element of an old man that was dying,
Huh.
say that he wants to find love. And it was very moving to see a human side of somebody who is larger than life. And
Yeah.
I loved, like, I always loved to find out about people. Like when Stern was cool, I would listen to Howard Stern, and he always was great about, interviewing people. Now he's terrible at it, and you see like when Joe Rogan does these like 3-hour conversations. But Joe, like, I don't know. It's like, that's not my cup of tea, because I don't know if he really knows what he's talking about, or he just does it for whatever. But it's just really interesting to watch him interview like James Hetfield like for 3 hours and talk about hunting. And because he makes the interview about the person or the topic. Like a lot of the comedians, they try to be funny, and it's like, like a lot of female comics are all like, like, my vagina this, and they're like, and this and this, and they're very like, they have a style. But I feel when you're interviewing somebody, you make it about the person. Like you do that. You've interviewed me a bunch of times, throughout the years, and you've always been a good interviewer because you made it about me, and you never took the spotlight or tried to be funny. We talk like we're the only two people in the world.
Yeah.
And I always walked away, and a lot of our interviews have helped me further my career in music. And I'm really proud of the stuff that we did with the Radio Titans. The show just evolved from like, I would have musicians, or I had Vicky Hamilton from managing Guns N' Roses, the early days, and I was a huge Guns N' Roses fan, and I asked her the questions that I wanted to know. Interviewing Bobby Brown before she even had the book deal, and she brought down Tommy Lee's sister. That was great. That was her first podcast or interview. I just found her on Facebook, and I just told her, I said, I think the guys were saying I had like 10,000 listeners a month. And it's like, it was really great. It's like finding out about people's interests.
Yeah. Well, okay. So aside from Kim, I remember you had the actress who played, I think, Kimmy Gibbler from Full House, and she had a wild, time dealing with drugs and sobriety, and then she got herself sober, thank God, and she's been successful on the Netflix update Fuller House.
Yeah,
But
Jody's.
I remember you were really proud of that episode. Can you comment on that?
Oh yeah, I mean Jody turned out to be a friend. We
Jody
met.
Sweeten, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she wasn't Kimmy Gibbler. I think she was like one of the like the older sister. I think she was DJ Tanner, not DJ Tanner, the other one. I forget. I never watched Full House.
Yeah,
but,
neither did I.
But I just love, like, because child stars, they go through this like incredible. They grow up in front of the camera, and there's that Hulu interview where they're, I think, like Blossom or doing this thing about they grow up, their body changes, and they're always remembered. They're trapped in time because you remember them as is. And Jody wrote a book, and it was a really interesting book because she was a star, and she still is. It's nice that she's doing well, putting Full House together again, a Fuller House. And her stories were incredible because substance abuse is something that everybody goes through. And she shined a lot of light on the topics, or her trials and tribulations with fame, being a mother and being married and stuff like that. It was interesting because I don't know, it's like growing up is awkward enough, but imagine growing up in front of the camera.
Yeah, no kidding. Then what were some of your other top guests? Because you had quite a few. I mean, we were like, whoa, that's pretty amazing. Like, I knew you'd be a cool host, but I thought all your guests would be from the music world, and some were, but you had people from all over the place.
I had this psychic, Patty Negri, I think her name was, and she was a paranormal, like she could talk to the dead, and that fascinated me. And it was our Halloween show, and we did a seance or a Ouija board in the studio, and she contacted Mary. I think the person name was Mary Pickford, the person who jumped off the Hollywood sign and committed suicide.
Yeah.
In the
Wow.
40s. And she could read energy, and me and the engineer were doing the Ouija board, and it actually moved. And I've never had that kind of, like, I've seen ghosts and all this crazy stuff, and I love that, other world stuff, but she really brought information from the other side. She felt that someone was murdered in the lobby on Hollywood Boulevard in our building.
Oh, I bet I wouldn't be surprised if there were multiple murders in that building.
Oh, that building was very strange. It was like, but it was really cool. It was like, as much as it is like, it's fun doing all these, Zoom interviews, but to go to a place and you have a green room and you have, like, an engineer and you have these mics, it makes it special. It's, and, I didn't just invite my friends. I invited, I would just cold call people or their managers, or I contact them through Facebook, and want them to come down. It's like Vicky Hamilton, this is before her book was written. Remember, this is 2012, where if you weren't a quote unquote big movie star, nobody really knew what you were doing. But I would go after these like unsung heroes, and I asked the harder questions, like, did anybody ever write a song about you? And Vicky was like, yeah. And I said, well, who did? She goes, I can't say. I was like, oh, wow. Because Vicky Hamilton is like a strong female in the music industry.
Yeah.
I mean, she is responsible for putting Guns N' Roses together. She told the story that she introduced Axl the Slash, and I gave her credit. I said, you're the reason why we have, Guns N' Roses. She goes, I wouldn't say that. She's really modest and stuff. And then I talked to Vicky a couple times after that, and she booked me at one of her shows. And again, that's like something that, like, the little 17-year-old kid in me would be like, oh my God, that's Vicky Hamilton. She was there in the beginning days, the early days of the biggest band in the world. But it wasn't just about music, because I didn't want to, I think everybody has something to say. And sometimes the interviewer doesn't give the opportunity for the person to say it. Like, I invited this therapist down. He was called John Kim, the Angry Therapist. He was great. Because he did this really out of the box talk about mental illness, drug addiction, all the stuff that was going on. And again, this was before the opioid pandemic.
Wow.
And we talked about like trauma, and like everybody, I believe everybody should have a therapist. I mean, it's
Sure.
it's kind of like, God rest his soul, but like, Kobe Bryant was a fantastic basketball player, but he didn't win any championships until Phil Jackson came along, because he was the coach. You need a producer to, get better music. You need a director to direct things. You need someone, as an artist, we see out of our art. The producer helps us achieve our vision and sees in, and that's what a therapist does. And John Kim is like fantastic. Talks about like, the sensitivity of a man. It's because everybody throws these like buzzwords about like, oh, I'm dating a narcissist, or they're this or this, and it's like, or I have anxiety, and like, with talking about it with John, it's like, I'm fascinated by all that, like mental illness and how the brain works and the reward systems. And it was strange. It was everybody goes, oh, I have anxiety. I was like, well, what's anxiety? And they're like, well, it's anxiety. I'm like, no, that's like saying, what's for lunch? And I go, lunch. And they go, no, what's for lunch? I said, lunch. Nobody just wants to go deeper into what's going on. That's why we're a medicated society. You know, I mean, the pandemic destroyed, you know, the social fabric of human existence pretty much. You know, everybody has, you know, PTSD, which is post-traumatic, stress disorder, where it's like, you know, every day we're threatened with death. You know, if you don't wear a mask, you're going to die, or this or that. Or when they see that there was President Trump and they're saying, well, he's a narcissist. Well, no, he's not. What is he? It's like people throw these buzzwords, but I think society is so uninformed about life, and they just use these like buzzwords. You got to be positive. No, if you're just positive about things, like, and that's one of the things I talked about with John. It's like, if you're just positive about things, that's not being honest. It's like there's, you know, positive and negative. Easy, girl. Positive and negative to me are points of reference. It's like, I would rather someone be honest than positive. And to me, it's like someone that's negative. It's like, oh, you're so negative. It's like, no, it's not about being negative. It's about being honest about what the situation is. I can be positive as the Titanic is sinking, but the boat's still going to sink, you know?
Yeah.
But there was some really good interviews. I think I interviewed a female comic, which was, I mean, she was fantastic, and she fell off the map, Laura Levitas. And man, she was opening up for Lisa Lampanelli, and Laura is a great friend. I don't know where she is, but she was one of the first people that I've known that ever got canceled because she made some derogatory remarks about Chinese way back in 2013, I think. And she said it on Twitter, and boy, they canceled her. And I don't know where Laura is. I mean, but she was just a go-getter, and she did a one-woman show that was sold out in Hollywood. Just such a good friend. I helped write that show with her. And she just dropped off the face of the map, and she's better than most of the female comics out there. You know, I'd love to find her, you know. Because
what do you think, not to make this self-aggrandizing, but just a general question, what do you think what made what we tried to do with Radio Titans stand out, and how did you feel that, you know, the thing we're admitting, because we're being very warts and all with this, is that we were terrible businessmen who didn't know how to market properly, or how to, you know, how much to charge in order to make it really sustaining. But we did, but our instincts creatively, we think were totally top notch, that we had really great creative things happening around us, with people like yourself, obviously. But, you know, how do you feel overall about, could we, is it a woulda coulda situation? Like,
oh yeah, it was definitely a woulda coulda. It was very like again, I think if, like, looking back, it's like we had, you know, incredible talent, on air talent, or on pod talent. I mean, it was, you know, and I think if we had kind of like not a business manager, because I know that you were running it, and there was rent on the space.
Oh, I needed a business manager. I needed one. Yeah.
You know, we needed somebody to oversee it. You know, we were booking our own guests because nobody knew what podcasting was in 2012. Really, nobody did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we call it, you know, it was Titans, you know, it was Titans Radio, and it was like online. But the best thing we did is we did it live on air.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I liked about it, because I mean, who wants to go back and listen to something now? That's all people do, you know, they save it. So we were live, and then you can capture it, but we never edited it. We never edited the interviews, whatever happened. We left it in. It's like when Kim came in, he came in with, you know, some really very strange girls that were like, you know, dominatrixes, or I think strippers, or, you know, and they were artists themselves. Yeah. And there was like 6 people in the studio, or 6 people in the studio, and it was great because it was like a free for all. But it was about to me, interviewing someone is like being in the moment. You just let it go. I would never write down my questions. I would just let
Yeah.
it unfold. And like I was told, I was like, I should do another podcast. I'm like, everybody's got a podcast now. And I mean, my career has gotten so much better, and I've evolved as a human, thank God. Um, you know, that it's, if I had a chance again, like what would I do differently back then? If we had like a business manager, if we had like, a talent booker, that would be like, okay. And instead of saying like, well, I do this person, it's like, well, no, well, maybe this person would be the better interviewer for this person. How does one get this to go across? It's about like,
Yeah.
I think we just, there were no rules, so we didn't even have a plan. The plan was to just interview people and put it out, and we
Yeah.
did really well. It's like, I interviewed a club booker, about how do you book bands in California that like aren't just like, run of the mill? Because I mean, musicians that play in bands, they're just, they sell beer. And what happens if you find a great band and they don't have a draw? And we talked about how that went. I interviewed like one of my best friends, this guy Mike Beans, who's in Vegas now, and we talked about music and life and growing up and coming from New York, and it gave people some insight, to the everyday challenges and struggles as an artist. Was it politically correct? No, that's one thing we weren't, because now it's like, I don't know if we could say the things that we wanted to say in this climate, because there's like, there's so many movements and so many people opinions. And the weird part about it is it was a simpler time back then, because opinions aren't facts, they're opinions. And there's all these causes. And I believe there's like, people put themselves as, I'm a victim, you're a villain, and you're bad because you don't agree and you don't support. It's it's very strange to see the world change in such a dramatic and traumatic way, that everybody wants to be politically correct because nobody can offend another person. And I'm offended by that. Like, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said it. It's like, I don't agree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
freedom of speech.
well, that's something that I haven't recorded my interview for this yet, but in thinking about it, what I've come to think is my reality of what I intended to do was, I didn't care, like people, several people have pointed out how it was completely unpredictable that somebody like myself, who is conservative and is a practicing Catholic and is the white power structure guy or whatever, threw open the doors to every race, every gender, every sexual orientation, every political persuasion. And the thing for me was, it just was about free speech, that if you were funny and you were interesting, and you had something you wanted to say, then I was like, yeah, come on in, do it, and whether it made business sense, it probably didn't, because we collapsed twice. But the thing is, that's how I saw it. I don't know if you have any thoughts as to that.
Well, you said it right there. It was interesting. Were you interesting? First, you picked very, eclectic. I forget some of the interviews, but the people that I know you interviewed and some of the other people interviewed, it wasn't about them promoting a book or a show or stuff. They just wanted to be heard, and you had opportunity to platform to be heard. When you see people go on talk shows, they're go see my new movie, or everybody's, I swear to God, sometimes I thought people's last names were .com, because of you would see, at an open mic or at a show, it's like, go to my band, blah, blah, blah.com. And it's like everything, you know, self-promotion, sorry, I got a phone call. Everything was self-promotion. There was no self-promotion of a project there. It was a person. It's like, what makes this person tick? It's like, I've seen it, like some of the stuff, like I would love to interview Edward Snowden. I mean, he like I think what he did was fantastic. I just think, because, we have, people spying on us, and, we have these phones and people are addicted to their phones. The government listens in. I love conspiracy nuts, about the whole QAnon and, and then there's like this, whole Corona thing, and like, oh, it was man-made. Who knows what it is? All I know is like over 500,000 people died. I don't know what it is, but let's stop more people from dying. Because if you look at the people that, like, people get caught up in the imaginary, and everybody says, like, if you don't support my cause, that means you're against me. It's like, no, I just don't. I'm not interested in that cause.
Yeah.
Or like the whole Marilyn Manson stuff, where, like, I guess you can say that, people, that a person was raped 5 or 6 years later, like even in the Cosby thing, and everybody says, it's like, I mean, again, I've never been raped and I've never raped anybody, but how, you would wait 15, 18 years or 5 or 6 years to come out and say something about someone. Is it true? I mean, there's the court of public opinions too. America or democracy was like, you're innocent until proven guilty. Not anymore. You're guilty. If you get arrested for it, you just get slammed. And I don't think that's right. It's mob mentality. That's one of my biggest fears, being accused of something I didn't do.
Yeah.
I couldn't even, and like the thing about it is, I did listen back to the old shows, and it was a more relaxed time to interview people. Now I think people censor themselves. I'm even finding myself that I'm watching what I say, because I have a career. I'm singing in a band, and like, oh, if I say the wrong thing, I could be, like, considered this. And even though I'm not that, one person says it, just because you said it doesn't make it true. But in this world, I believe you do. It's like, I look at, like, comedians, and I saw this documentary about Monica Lewinsky. Monica Lewinsky was destroyed as a human being because she was the butt of everybody's joke. Okay. Yeah. Now, if Monica Lewinsky, that happened this day, would people be making fun of an older man taking advantage of a younger woman? And would they find it funny? I don't know. It's like, to me, it's what two consenting adults do. Everybody is like, oh, like Marilyn Manson groomed this person. They groomed this person. It's like, did he, or did you just do something that you're really embarrassed or ashamed about? The whole Harvey Weinstein stuff is really a hot button topic. It's like, but I feel like I have to watch what I say, because it'll come across, and I'm not afraid, but it's like, I don't want to be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And back then, we didn't have to worry about that. So it was a very, very good time to get to the root of stuff, to talk about mental illness, to talk about, the dead or suicide, or to talk about, Kim Fowley messing around with dominatrixes and stuff. But at the end of the day, towards the end of that conversation, he wanted love. And I think that's what everybody wants, is love. And I don't think people love themselves. I think people blame other people. It's like, I'm not a big, like, I grew up Catholic, but like, you're one of my favorite, like, practicing Catholics, because you're not judgmental. you live and let live. You're one of the nicest Catholics I've ever met, because you don't condemn people for what they do. You see who the person is, and you say, hey, I respect what you do. You do it. I'm not going to shove my beliefs upon you. It's like, I love it when last year was crazy. The Pope came out and said, love is love.
Yeah.
And then all the other priests were saying like, well, the Pope's out of his mind. It's like, let a man love a man, let a woman love a woman. If you were biologically female and soul wise, you're a male, change whatever you want to do, be who you want to be. Let people live. Let people be who they want to be. Don't hurt anybody. It's like, life is really very strange in these times. And I haven't done a lot of interviews lately, but I've done a lot of like print interviews for the band I'm doing. But we're getting ready to do a bunch of interviews for the next record. And I like it because it's about like standing up or having a voice. And I wish that like what we had back then was going on now. Yeah, that little collective of people was still together, because people should look back at it. Especially now with like we only filmed a couple of them. like, did you film any of yours?
Not many. And Belcher, my partner in Hollywood days, Jake Belcher's sending me a whole ton of stuff on a flash drive overnight tonight. But I think it's mostly audio files. But hang on a second, let me pause here.
Yeah.
Because I think I got plenty.